we're talking about is in the house, a series that the Lord dropped on my heart about a month or so ago. And he was saying that he wants to bring us back to a place that when we come here, that we don't just turn this place into just a social gathering, just a group of people that come, we enjoy seeing each other, we enjoy the song, we enjoy what's being said, but we miss the whole point of coming. He said, I want you to bring back the point of coming to the house of God, and that is to anticipate receiving something when you get here. We ought not get to a place where, I'm preaching already, we ought not get to a place where we come here and we don't expect to see somebody get saved. Y'all missed that. We don't want to ever come here and we don't expect to see somebody get healed, to see somebody get delivered, to see a mindset changed and shifted. Every time we come here, we ought to come here saying, God, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do? How can you use me today to help your agenda get out? So he spoke and said we need to get back and have an expectation of what's taking place inside of the house. And I know that this, to some of you, this is just a building. It's a building where, we come and we worship for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We go back home. But it's more than a building. It's more than that. This is the place that's been dedicated. It's been dedicated unto God as a designated meeting place where we come and meet God face to face. It's the designated place. Now, that's not to say that God can't meet us anywhere else. He can meet us. He can meet us at home. He can meet us in the car. Has anybody ever met God in your car while you was driving? Ooh. My God, have you ever met him while you was at the store? You just pushing the cart, and all of a sudden the power of God just touched you. I don't know, Shabbat just touched you, and this God just reminding you that he is God in the house. All type of foolishness goes on in your house. But I want to tell you something, that this house is not your house. Yeah. Y'all missed that. A whole lot of stuff. I'm going to sit over here now. Sit on this part of the couch. Because you ought to be free when you come to God's house. Everywhere you go in God's house, you ought to be able to feel his presence. Whether you sit at the end, in the middle, on the side, you ought to be able to feel what goes on in the house. You ought to be able to come to God's house. I'm preaching already. I know I didn't read nothing yet, but I'm going to get to it. You ought to be able to come to God's house without worrying about who's looking at you in God's house. You ought to be able to come to God's house knowing that I'm here to get just as much as you here to get. You ought to be able to come to God's house without worrying about, I wonder who's looking at me, who's talking about me. You ought to be able to come to God's house without being intimidated of walking in God's house. Y'all missed that right there. You ought to be able to come to God's house, watch this, and just sit back and rest. Y'all don't like that. Just rest in his presence, rest in his glory. I don't know who I'm preaching to, who I'm talking to, but whoever came in here desperate for a move of God, whoever came in here hungry and thirsty for a move of God, God said, I'm going to make sure that it takes place also in your house. You ought to lean over and tell somebody, say, it's going to happen at your house too. Tell them, it's going to happen at your house too. I think some of you've been missing your appointment with God. You come to the meeting place, but you go past the office. The meeting place is here at the church. You come to the church, but whenever God is knocking on the door of your heart, you leave. That's when God is trying to meet you at the appointment. He's trying to call you and let you know, I made an appointment with you, and I'm waiting at my desk. I'm waiting to talk to you. I'm waiting to counsel you. I'm waiting to heal you. I'm waiting to examine you, but you keep leaving when I'm calling you. God is calling you and you calling somebody else. God is saying, meet me, and you're going to meet somebody else. And I hear God say, every time you try to meet somebody else, he said, I'm not going to let it work. I'm not going to allow it to work until you get to the right place where your needs can be met. And what's going to be met is going to be met at the house of God. Some of us, we got a bad attitude about church. Why we got to go to church? Me and God, we got our own personal relationship. I don't need to go to church to meet God. I can meet God at home. You can meet God at home. But I don't understand how you're going to talk to God at home when you don't talk to God at his house. I don't understand that. I just don't understand. Me and God talk all the time. Really? What did he say? Did he tell you to come to his house anytime soon? Did he tell you to stop sinning anytime soon? Did God warn you about your iniquities? Did he warn you about